We begin tonight with news of yet another deadly bombing in Kenya. 2 explosions killed 10 people and injured at least 70 others in the capital city, Nairobi, on Friday. Police said 2 improvised explosive devices detonated. The first went off in a minibus and the other in the downtown marketplace. Witnesses said many of the injured were bleeding profusely. It was a scene filled with panic as emergency teams rushed the injured to nearby hospitals. So far, authorities arrested 2 suspects and are continuing their investigation. This is the latest in a series of deadly attacks in recent months. Earlier, I spoke with Arise News East Africa Bureau Chief Jeff Koinange, who is in Nairobi, Kenya. Jeff, it's good to see you. First of all, just give us the latest. What happened?
Well, earlier on today, twin bombs in what we call the lower income parts of Nairobi blew up. One was in a very popular marketplace called Gikomba, where on any given day there could be 2,000–3,000 people. This being a Friday, it was packed to the rafters. A bomb went off, killing 10, injuring scores. The last count of injured was somewhere about 73, according to emergency officials. The second bomb in a minibus in another low-income part of town known as Huruma, not too far from the Somali-dominated neighborhood of East Lee. Now, this is very similar to what happened 2 weeks ago when twin bombs happened on a very popular highway in and out of the city. So again, 2 bombs, close to a dozen killed, scores injured, Debbie.
Jeff, we know that the official number is 10 killed, but are there any missing? Might the fatality rate go up?
It very well could, because again, that marketplace is always teeming with shoppers. And on this day, emergency officials are still there at this time. In fact, they're appealing to Kenyans to donate blood because there's a lot of carnage, a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos, a lot of panic. You can just imagine the situation. Again, Kenyans on edge for the last couple of weeks ever since those bombs went off, including the second largest town, Mombasa. One of them right outside a very popular tourist resort, the other one in the city of Mombasa itself. Looks like bombs are going off left, right, and center. Security forces have their hands full, Debbie.
Absolutely. Of course, we all remember the attack on the Westgate Mall back in the fall. Al-Shabaab took responsibility for that attack. Has any group, including Al-Shabaab, taken responsibility for this act?
Not yet, Debbie, and sometimes they don't take responsibility. But what Al-Shabaab has repeatedly said is, as long as Kenyan troops remain in Somalia, and they've been there, you well know, since October 2011, Al-Shabaab insists they will continue attacking the homeland. The Kenya government insists Kenyan troops will remain in Somalia, and the primary objective back then, by the way, was to root out Al-Shabaab, to get them at their headquarters, and also to secure the very porous border between Kenya and Somalia. Kenyan government officials, including the president, insists the troops will remain in Somalia until that mission is accomplished.
What we understand, Jeff, is that the U.S. Embassy had indeed issued a travel alert recently to American citizens, as well as the British Embassy there, pulling out many of the British travelers that were in Kenya. Had the Kenyan government issued any alerts or warnings?
Not at all, Debbie. Not the kind that the Americans and the British issue. I mean, look, the security had been stepped up in various parts of town, in malls, in government buildings, in the upper income neighborhoods. You could see security presence throughout the last few days. In the lower income neighborhoods, I guess because there is less security, it makes it more, I guess, much more easier for Al-Shabaab to slip through the net, to detonate their bombs, because the security there isn't as tight as it is in other neighborhoods. By the way, coming back to the American Embassy, I passed by there this afternoon, and there were Marines patrolling the grounds of the U.S. Embassy. So obviously, that threat must have been very serious. The British government actually urging its tourists in Mombasa to get on a plane and get out of town. Clearly, the threats for those embassies were very serious, and they acted on them, Debbie.
Reporting for us from Nairobi, Kenya, Jeff Koinange, thank you so much. I know you'll monitor this and keep us updated. Take care, Jeff. Now to Nigeria. There is a big change in plans for Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan. The president called off a visit to the town where more than 200 schoolgirls were abducted last month by Boko Haram Islamist militants. Arise NewsHour anchor Charles Aniagolu traveled to Borno State to speak exclusively with some of the girls who managed to escape and speak to their parents along with school and community leaders. I spoke with Charles earlier from the Nigerian capital, Abuja. Charles, you called it, you nailed it on the head yesterday. You said you were surprised that Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan had announced he was going to the Borno State before he went, and now he has canceled his trip. Has he given any particular reason why?
Well, Debbie, the main thing that they're saying is that, in fact, they did not announce the trip to the public, and so the issue of cancellation does not arise. Of course, you and I know that that information was leaked to the press. In fact, there was quite a lot of talk of a ring of sort of steel of defense being sort of put up around Chibok in order to secure the place ahead of the president's arrival, and there was even talk of whether or not there were going to be camera crews allowed in. But what the presidency are saying today is that they did not announce any trip, and therefore the president has not cancelled any trip. He's simply not going to Chibok, and that their official announcement was about his visit to France, Paris, where he's expected to meet neighbouring countries, the leaders of neighbouring countries, tomorrow. So to that extent, they're essentially saying that, this trip was a trip that never was.
Well, then I can't help asking, it's been a month or more since these girls were kidnapped and the president hasn't visited this area. So what's the public sentiment surrounding his reaction, not only to trying to rescue these girls, but going to visit the village and their parents?
Well, I think certainly there is a sense of disappointment that he still has not been there to see firsthand what happened, to assess it, given the, the international reaction to this, and certainly the enormous anger from many, many Nigerians across this vast country. I think also that there is a sense that, mixed sort of news coming out of the presidency, that in fact the president may have met those relatives, that they were flown down to Abuja, and that he had sort of a confidential meeting with them. On the other hand, we've also had people in the presidency saying that the president sent an aircraft to Maiduguri to bring the girls down, the escaped girls and the relatives of the abducted girls down to Abuja, and they simply refused to go.
So interesting. You already brought up the security summit that's going to be taking place in Paris, France this weekend. What are you hearing about it? Who will be participating, and what do they hope to accomplish?
Well, the thrust of it really is that President Jonathan has said for a long time, supported by Nigerian sort of security officials, that Boko Haram is something that goes beyond Nigeria, that it is now a regional or certainly sub-regional problem within West Africa, because Boko Haram, come into Nigeria, strike, and they've got bases in Nigeria and in neighbouring countries like Niger, Chad and Cameroon. And so what the meeting is all about, under the auspices of France, these are all francophone countries, is that they're trying to forge a united front so that they can try and tackle the Boko Haram insurgency, and from all the different sides, all the different countries, try and put pressure on Boko Haram, and perhaps even create a united sort of West African force to deal with it.
And we'll see if they can accomplish any of those goals. We'll have to leave it right there. Reporting for us from Abuja, Charles Aniagolu. Thank you, Charles.
Thank
you, Charles. And now for analysis on the range of strategies available to rescue the girls and defeat Boko Haram, we turn to retired General William Kip Ward. He is the inaugural commander of the U.S. Africa Command and joins us from Washington, D.C. General Ward, thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Debbie. I'm happy to be a part of the show this evening.
Well, you know what? I want to start with your experience during your tenure with AFRICOM. Did you see these extremist threats growing in Nigeria then that we're seeing now?
We certainly had indications that the Boko Haram was there in northern Nigeria operating. The mode of operation then was basically reaction against the government trying to do things to institute a Islamic type of a state there in northern Nigeria, railing against Western culture, especially those things that involved teaching and education, and the girls targeting as a part of that. Yes.
There's been such an expression of frustration toward the Nigerian government for dealing with this insurgency threat of Boko Haram, not just now with this kidnapping, but over the last few years. What's your faith in the government that they can get their arms around this?
Well, the Nigerian government clearly has capacity to do many things in this country. Nigeria, as you know, is a huge country, vast expanses of territory, and the ability to control all of it simultaneously and in toto is certainly a difficult challenge. As the Nigerian government, to include its entirety of its security apparatus, not just its military, coordinate and engage, it does have a capacity to do that. Now, whether it can do it or will do it is another question.
Yeah, I think that's the question a lot of people are asking. Of course, the United States has sent a team to help in terms of intelligence and surveillance to try to find and rescue these girls. Can you give us a little bit more idea of the resources, whether it's AFRICOM or the team that's being sent there now, the resources they have to help the Nigerian government find and rescue these girls?
Well, as you know, when we stood up the United States Africa Command in 2007, one of our main objectives was to do what we could do to assist the African security apparatuses on the continent to increase their capacity to indeed provide for their own security. And that mission goes on. And so when you look at the resources that we would provide, it would include, as you've indicated, the intelligence resources, but not just a physical equipment machine. It's also the analysts that would be training or assisting the Nigerians in understanding what they see, translating it into actionable information that they can then use to find, determine plans, execute the sorts of things that would be productive in knowing where the girls are and then releasing them, securing their rescue in a safe way, not causing additional danger and harm to the young girls.
Very briefly, before I have to let you go, what do you think is the more likely scenario for success? That is going in, finding these girls and rescuing them in some sort of military, paramilitary operation, or negotiating with the Boko Haram?
Well, if the efforts focus on the areas where these young girls may be, focus on the people who are there, because clearly someone knows where they are, and causing those who are there, the local population, through engagement, through addressing their concerns, their needs, such that they receive a level of cooperation, then it increases the probability of something being done successfully. That coupled with good intelligence, good information that determines where they are and what conditions they're being held under, the number of fighters that Boko Haram has surrounding them, those sorts of things. There clearly is a potential for that, but it's certainly not without considerable danger if it would be executed or implemented.
Retired General William Kip Ward. General Ward, again, thank you so much. It's good to speak with you.
Thank you very much.